It's a great moment having you stay tuned to watch AAU Talks, the voice of higher education in Africa. My name is Ajiman Ochodako, and today I'm bringing you a great session about breaking barriers, not just any barriers. We're looking at women who have dedicated themselves to achieve great strides in science education, something we've not had time to look at so much in our continent. And these women are here, phenomenal women in the fields of science, and are going to tell their stories on how they began their journey to that length or the height of achieving science education, and are also willing to stretch their hand down to help young women, mentor them up into achieving great strides in science education. So just grab a pen and paper and let's enjoy the session with these two phenomenal figures within the field of science education in Africa. Be right back. So I'm glad to have you back from the break. And before we went for the break, I told you that we're looking at breaking barriers, advancing women's education in science across Africa. And I'm glad to have two phenomenal and accomplished figures within the science education in Africa. The first is Professor Chioma Blaise Chikere, who is a professor of environmental microbiology and biotechnology at the University of Port Harcourt. Prof, welcome to AAU Talks. And I also have Professor Beatrice Olutoyin Opeolu, who's a highly accomplished professor in environmental management and toxicology. You're welcome to AAU Talks, Prof.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. It's always a great feeling with wonderful chills when you find that women have made great strides in higher education, particularly in science education, because the records and the analysis tells us that women have some difficulty in science. But having you two figures here with this phenomenal background, we would like to first understand how did the story begin for you? Did you ever dream of being this accomplished figure within science, or it was like a strike of a meteorite that happened? Prof. Chikere, help us with the journey.
I never thought I would become a professor growing up as a child.
Okay.
I'm a village girl, nobody in my family at the time that I knew even had a master's degree, talk less of a PhD. But I had at the back of my mind, I knew as a child that I was not going to have the life my parents had. How that will happen, I never knew. But I also understood as a child that I needed to study. There used to be a song they sing in my village that if you study hard, then you have the shoes that will sound very well. So I don't want to go into that now, but yeah. So at the back of my mind, education was my key out of poverty. And I had the blessing of God to be one of the so-called smart one at the time in the classroom. And that encouraged me to continue my education until I got all of my qualifications. But I never thought I would get to become a professor until I got appointed as a graduate assistant in the university. Then I knew I needed a PhD. I knew I would become a professor someday.
Splendid.
Thank you.
Prof. Chioma, the beginning for you.
My parents were scientists, and my father was a teacher, principal at the time. My mother a nurse, so they were both scientists. So I grew up to just know science. My father taught chemistry, so I loved science because he was always getting the textbooks in science, physics, chemistry, biology. So that was it for me. I studied microbiology up to PhD. And then I was employed because my lecturers and mentors felt, well, you are smart. I know I tried to get jobs in the industry. I remember when I did part of my research work at NNPC, that's Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, yes. So the manager of the R&D then, now late, Dr. S.E. Ofodile, said, Chioma, you are not meant for the industry. You are an academic. So just try and find your place in a university. You're a researcher. So I saw myself employed in University of Port Harcourt. And then I knew I had to get a PhD for me to really be in that space. And here am I with a PhD. I'm a professor. I've risen to the professorate and full professor of environmental microbiology and biotechnology with a young family. My youngest is 5. I had them while yes, driving the full force of research, and equally being accomplished. I'm just from a small family size. We had two. We're three initially. My parents lost one, so I'm left with a younger sibling, a boy. So I knew I just had to excel as a woman, saw the stereotypes around women, the girl child. So and now I have 3 daughters. So what I wouldn't want to bequeath to my 3 daughters would be low self-esteem, and then the stereotypes that you have barriers and ceilings. You couldn't just get beyond this level. No. So yes.
I think that first I would say rest in peace to Joe Fudele for making that discovery in you, because that was a wonderful one. You know, today we sit to celebrate, and we sit to also get a flashback onto all the times that we felt we couldn't make it there. Were there any mentors, Prof. Beatrice? Many mentors that you said, these people made the way. They saw something in me and they led me on. Who are these people that you want to give credence to?
I think my undergraduate supervisor, Professor Bangbushe, he loved me as a student. He thought I had good potentials. He still raves about me every time now to other people. He was the one that really thought fit for the space.
Yeah.
And my co-supervisor for my PhD, also Professor Arowolo, was also one of those early days. But then when I went to the University of Ibadan for my master's degree, I had a fantastic, phenomenal woman as supervisor, Dr. Fadina. And she was the one that took me to my first international conference.
Great.
I couldn't afford the conference, so she told me, come sleep in my house in Ibadan. I was living in Abeokuta, so that we could travel by road together to Abuja. Great. I said, but I wouldn't be able to afford the accommodation. She said, no worries, you will share my bed. And that for me was just indescribable at the time, because that it was a time when student supervisor kind of relationship is not what we have now, that our students are our friends. You see them, you want to run away, most of them at the time. But this woman will always tell me, listen, you need to look for information, listen, you need to do this and that. So she was actually the one that I saw at that early stage and really encouraged me to go look for opportunities, search of opportunities. She would tell me literally that nobody will give it to you. You have to look for it. Yeah. And then when I came back for my PhD, I became an assistant lecturer. People like the executive director here, the AAU was my lecturer. I saw them doing their research. So he taught me actually in my undergraduate studies. He can't remember me again. But people like that, they were role models from afar that never even knew they were my role models. Because the space I was not a research space. The people around me in my immediate space. So what helped me in the earlier career is to model my path and plans and goals around people that I think are doing well in those areas that I want to excel. And that helps me a lot. And that's why most of my research mentors in Nigeria, those early days, they were not even environmental scientists. Most of them are in agri-economics, agriculture, and things like that, because they are the ones doing the research that were attracting grants and so on and so forth. So, and after that, of course, I have mentors all over the world, even until now, that still mentor me in different areas of my trajectory.
Great. So, let's speak from you, Prof. Choma, about these people who have really held you up. Who are these people?
Like I mentioned, the Prof. of Dr. Fodile, that said I wasn't meant for the industry, that I should just go for the research institution, university specifically. And then when I did my master's, I had a supervisor, then Dr. Obulie, now Professor Obulie, who was supervised by my PhD supervisor. He supervised my MSc research and connected me with Professor Bokwasili, who later became my PhD supervisor. Not only that, he equally supervised my husband and recommended me to be married by my husband.
Oh, really?
So, yes. So he was really nice. He has disengaged from the university now. He has retired. So he made me apply for grants, told me, Choma, you need to have a research culture, and then have finances to drive research, meaningful research that will inform decisions and equally engender transformational change in our space. So he's my role model. And then my husband as well, he's a microbiologist, works for the industry, oil and gas industry. So we rub minds together. He's very supportive. As I'm here now, he's the one helping out with the family, the baby. And then I met Professor Beatrice through IFS. That's the beauty of having the research grant, because the granting bodies, they have a way of having a network of the grantees to make sure that you have intercourse of ideas, exchange of ideas, and the mentorship and leadership experience as well. So I met her in 2008 when we had one of such workshops. And since then, she's held my hand. Then the Secretary General of AAU, I'm meeting him for the first time in person. He's been a virtual mentor, validating me through my mentor, Professor Beatrice, because we are very visible on social media. I always follow AAU pages, LinkedIn, social media pages, LinkedIn, Facebook, and I get information from them, like calls for opportunities. So through those platforms, he validated me. And when he heard that we were in Accra, Professor Beatrice told him that we were here. So he said, "Are you there with Professor Chioma?" So these are the pillars I have, the support systems I have. Amazing. And my mother as well, because my mother retired and saw me struggling with kids, struggling with research, family. So she retired, was offered a contract after retirement from the teaching hospital. She said, "No, I need to support my only daughter." So she was there. I could go on research visits. She would look after my family while I was there. Then I have another mentor too. I met through my TWAS fellowship in 2017. She was equally in the conference. We'll be leaving this night, Professor Memory Tekere from University of South Africa, where I'm an academic associate as well. Great. So she's been a mentor as well, giving me opportunities to equally explore in research and innovation. Splendid. And my Vice Chancellor, Splendid. Who engenders inclusivity, diversity, belonging in higher education leadership, saw me as a young researcher, a young professor, appointed me to be the director of Entrepreneurial Center in the university. We have so many women in leadership positions in the University of Port Harcourt, Nigeria. Our bossa is a woman, our registrar is a woman, university librarian is a woman, the provost of the College of Health Sciences is a woman. We have so many directors that are women. We have so many heads of department that are women. We have so many deans. And so he balances, and he's very supportive of women, supports my being here in Ghana to attend my professional conference.
Splendid. Thank you. These are very, very warm and positive testimonies you've given about your background and also your mentors who really led the way for you. We will have a lot to talk about when we look at the challenge within the scene of women in science and how we can break through. So just stay with us. We're back with more on the challenges women face within science education and how are we breaking to navigate to get to destination. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back on AAU Talks, the voice of higher education in Africa. We're looking at breaking barriers and advancing women education in science and across Africa. And I have with me two phenomenal figures within the science education field to talk more about this. And before we went on break, we're about looking at the unique challenges. Empirical studies make it quite, it's appalling that women struggle so much in performance, cognitive proficiency in science education. You are two outstanding figures, making this whole, this background and the case quite opposing. What is the true state of women in science education? What's the challenge and what's the way forward? Prof. Beatrice.
Thank you very much. Women in science education in Africa, they have challenges just as men in science also have. It's just that for the women, it's another layer of challenges. Issues of infrastructure, for example, research grants, for example, those cuts across men and women. So I don't want to belittle that also in that sense. But over and above that, women have other issues that are linked to the perceived roles of women, the perceived capabilities of women. I remember some years back, I had to tell my colleagues in Abeokuta that, listen, if you call me Dr. Mrs. again, I will start addressing you Dr. Mr. Because I felt belittled. I felt my degree was being belittled by adding the Mrs. Because doctor is doctor. I got my PhD the way my male colleague got it. We did the same amount of work and things like that. So it's one of the things, some people don't see anything bad in it, but I think it's discriminatory in some sense. So people see women that, oh, she's a PhD holder, but she's also a woman. Why must that be? Because physiology has nothing to do with intelligence. Whether you're a boy, a girl, you have different strengths and you can be intelligent in any space if given the right opportunities. So that is a challenge for me. The stereotype of saying, somebody seeing me, oh, is this Professor Paulu? They thought it's a big person with a big, huge mouth. So it's demeaning to in that sense. But over and above that, there are issues of cultural stereotypes of roles, gender roles. You're here working, your wife is probably somewhere working, and the man gets back home at 4. The woman is still in the lab until 6, and the man is still there in the lying on the couch watching the TV, waiting for the woman to come back by 8 to cook the food. It's a layer of burden, and many of our women still go through all of those. In the workplace, the man is perceived to be more competent. And that is why in many places you will see women behaving and acting like the so-called iron lady because they want to be seen as competent. And competence has nothing to do with your personality as an empathetic person, because the women are naturally empathetic.
Absolutely.
And that should not be taken away from them because they are now leaders. Being empathetic is not synonymous with incompetency.
Absolutely.
And being assertive is not also synonymous with cruelty.
Absolutely.
So some of those issues, there's a delicate balance in managing that for most women. And I guess it's something that needs to be addressed. Women themselves need to understand that you accept yourself as a woman first, be authentic to yourself as a woman, then you can address some of these issues. So there are layers of, I mean, she's here now, the baby is at home with the husband. If there's no supportive husband, she probably will be here with the baby or not come at all. Many women lose opportunities because they have to raise families, they have to raise babies. So those are different levels that people take for granted. They don't see it as a big issue because, oh, well, she's just a woman. She needs to do what she needs to do. But with additional support and, enhancing things as simple as creating baby nursing spaces and conferences, organizing carers and conferences for nursing mothers. They can go a long way in supporting women in science to progress in their career and be where they should be and assess the opportunities they need to assess and be who they should be in the spaces they occupy. Because remember, the world population is almost 50% or over of females. And so if you don't allow your women to grow to their full potential, you are effectively denying the world the benefits, the productivity that come from half of the world population. So I think it's important to start interrogating some of these issues and figuring out how do we navigate it, especially for women in Africa.
That points to the area of work-life balance. But there is also one issue or one concern about qualities. Women excelling in science. The key qualities and skills that actually detect or let's say promote or indicate success. Professor Shuma, I want you to look into this. Are there some specific skills or qualities that inculcate or let's say generate or provide that kind of level ground for you to excel in science?
Exactly. Thank you so much. Yes. You have your innate qualities and you equally need to train yourself to kind of acquire some of them. through mentorship, like I've tried to give a trajectory of great people, phenomenal people that have helped me to really gain grounds in science. And there's one quote I saw, I said, push yourself because no other person is going to do it for you. So for you to achieve anything, you must believe in yourself and have that self-leadership. You mustn't be pushed around. You must have a focus. You know your aim, you know your vision, you know what you want for yourself. For me as a woman, I never wanted to just have an image around MRS, that Mrs. Because most women, especially from an African context, you get to a certain stage, you know the pressure comes, you need to marry, your mates are getting married, and then you are a scientist, yes, you need to do labs, you need to drive your career to the next level, you're a researcher in a research institution, you need to get a PhD and all that. So when you try to balance all this, it becomes chaotic. So for me, I believed in myself, I knew what I wanted. In as much as I want to have a family, I wanted my own image. I wanted to be a person of influence. I wanted to happen to the world from Nigeria, not running out of my country, not running out of my continent to go to a stable environment and then excel. I knew the challenges I would face. So I told myself, how best do I navigate around this study terrain? So I started doing things like I was introducing into writing research grants. I had to take it off from there. The first time I wasn't successful, but they saw some credibility in what I wrote to IFS, and I was invited to Mali to come and revise my application. And that was 3 weeks to my wedding. So you can imagine what the white wedding in a lady's life, you know, that monumental,
the tension.
memorable, yes, event. My husband was in the field. He was just employed by a company, an oil company, and they had to go out to the field. So I was the person to do all the arrangements and preparations. He didn't really see reasons why I should be out of the country to Mali. It was still this, my mentor, Professor Bokwasli, that called me and said, Chioma, there is no best wedding in the world. After that, it goes into history, and you may not even revisit that again. But this may be the platform and the springboard that will launch you into the global space through your research. And I took that advice. Went to Mali, came back, like 2 weeks after that revision, I was written by IFL that I had won the grant, $12,000. Wow. So I believe in myself. I know what I want for myself. The stereotypes are there, but I shatter glass ceilings unapologetically. I'm pregnant, I move with my baby in the stomach.
That's right.
Yes, I'm nursing a baby, I move with the baby.
That's right.
So in my 13 years of productive years as a researcher, I had moved with pregnancy or a suckling child. So the first time I traveled for an international conference engagement, CITAC Europe in 2022, that was when I traveled without a baby or pregnancy, and I celebrated it. So I celebrate myself. I believe in myself. Thank you. So that's what I want every girl child, every woman to have. Yes.
That's an impactful story right there. And Prof. Beatrice, let's now take it to the issue of diversity. How do we promote diversity now within the science discipline? Having you been a champion within it, if we were to deliberately open the space up and give women a place, how do we go about this?
Intentionality. Intentionality in terms of policies, intentionality in terms of resource allocation, intentionality in terms of selection. So we have experts across Africa that have done, excellent work in terms of having data about issues around women empowerment, women inclusivity, and so on and so forth. And again, because I have a son, I don't want to say women all the time. When I'm talking about inclusivity in my context, it does not necessarily mean bringing women all the time. It just means that find a balance in that space that you are. And the balance is not just about gender also. It's also about generations. 4 generations. We were in CTAC meeting earlier this week, and we took a photograph. I saw 3 generations of scientists, actually 4, my mentors, myself and her and our mentors, and all of those kind of things in the mix, because experience cannot be bought. There are things that you will still get from the older generation that are very relevant and critical for the survival of the coming one. There are other perspectives from the younger ones to us that when they bring them to the table, they are excellent, and they will be, they will give us better outcomes than if my generation single-handedly sit down and make it happen. So I believe in inclusivity in that sense. But now, in the African context, we want to support women and encourage women specifically. Like I said earlier on, creating a space that fosters and encourages women to be in science will be important. And it starts from the lab. It starts from the classroom. Don't demonize a girl child that is pregnant. Pregnant is not a disease. When a girl is pregnant, it doesn't mean she won't excel. It doesn't mean that she's useless. It just means that is her own journey. Let's support that girl to be the best she can be. Absolutely. I think we can start from there.
Absolutely.
And then you create a situation in the workplace where you don't push the woman to feel lesser than the main colleague. I remember in my department at the time, I was the only woman in the department. And every time there was a departmental meeting, I was made to write the meetings like the secretary.
Because you were the woman.
Because I was the woman. Because the women are always secretary, and at some point I had to challenge that as a young lecturer. That why must I have younger lecturers that are men now? I thought it was because I was the youngest of the lecturers, but now why must I be the departmental secretary? So those are some of the issues. And so when you are given an opportunity as a woman, you want to go over and above the call of duty to prove yourself to the rest of the world that, I'm as competent, if not better, than my male colleague. So some of those things, if we are intentional about addressing those things, then I think life can be better for women. Women can stay in academia. And of course, we can't also deny the fact that women get bullied. Women get forced into things they don't want to do in the workplace. Some people still, coerce women to sexually harass them in different ways, make them uncomfortable in spaces that they work. I think those are some of the things that drive people away. Some people will not even want their wives to work in some spaces because they're scared that the professors in the space will, contaminate their women. Those kind of, so it's a mix and a cocktail of all kinds of issues that we have to be intentional about. Create a safe space, provide the resources, support them. When a woman needs support to be a woman that will raise the next generation of people into the world by making babies, provide a support system for her as is done in other places. In other places, when you are making babies, you're allowed to take a gap in your career, make your babies, raise them, and come back and continue from where you stopped. In our context in Africa, is different. So some of these issues, we need to start addressing them one after another, and a few of them can actually be addressed with little or no financial resources at all. And then we can continue to grow the next generations of scientists, women scientists in Africa.
Great. Let's now settle in, because we have quite some few time to just wrap up. But looking at the last part, which is the future of science education in Africa, can you boldly say that the future of Africa's scientists will evolve around majority or women will have a higher stake in the future of science in Africa, where women are the fulcrum? Can you say that we see that in Africa?
Thank you. Yes, we do. Because as we are here now in Accra, we actually attended a regional conference, which is the Society of Environmental Toxicology and Chemistry, CTAC. It's a global professional society. And then we have geographic units in all the continents of the world. So now for CTAC Africa, we have our own meetings, conferences biannually. That's every 2 years. So we could see the number of women that came, especially early career scientists. And those of us that they look up to, the role model and the mentorship, most of them, I had never met them in person. But because of my visibility and my authenticity and my organic stories, every week there must be something. I create content. If I'm carrying a baby to an academic event, I have pictures, because they say pictures will speak. Yes, they will tell a lot about a story better than words. So I have pictures to tell you that is achievable. So most of them, having read about me, having connected with me virtually on my social media platforms, they were really encouraged. So I feel the women, they are really out to take the world by force. They say, be the change you want to see in the world. And I feel we need that role model system where women will be authentic, women in science will be authentic, women leaders in leadership as well will be authentic, so that these younger ones will look up to you and tell themselves that having a baby or raising a family or even being single with a PhD is not a curse. So if someone like this can get to that level, that means I'm potentially empowered as well together. So I see the African women we have now as very intentional. They are highly fired up to really engender transformational change in our spaces. And we presented a paper, an oral paper with our colleagues and collaborators from Europe on how to embed science education in the classroom. It was actually a plenary presented at Organization for Women in Science for the Developing World International Conference hosted by my university, University of Port Harcourt. So eventually, we submitted the abstract to CITAC Africa Conference, and it was accepted for platform presentation. So it was really wonderful. We could see the women, the smiles on their faces, because they felt okay when we start even from the early childhood education. We start telling them about science. All my kids, my 3 girls, they are so much interested in science. They are in science Olympiad. They are in science competitions. My daughters are in, they told me that they are in gifted children clubs for science, math, science, and all that. So you see, when you are the role model and you are doing it so well, and you are equally achieving great things, you become a motivation for them. So Africa is really blessed to have phenomenal women, of which we occupy that space.
And the future is better.
Add to that the future is Africa.
Absolutely.
Yes.
You know, at this moment, I know there's someone watching you across the 27 countries divided within the continents, and they are very impressed by what they're seeing, your background, trajectories, everything awesome. If you were to just spell out 3 words, just 3 words, intentional about these 3 words, to this young person or young woman struggling in science, how or what are you going to tell them right now? 3 words.
Just be you.
Splendid. Prof. What do you understand?
Show up for yourself.
It's interesting. I think it's an awesome mix of 2 great figures in science, and they have really demystified the odds that if it doesn't matter who you are, the failures that come your way are all part of your storyline. You need to push towards the goal of becoming who you are. And science is as equally a playground or a learning ground for anyone, whether male or female. So it's about time we rise beyond the odds, the narratives. They are just words. The action is you. So thank you very much for your time on AAU Talks. And Prof. Choma, Prof. Beatrice, I thank you so much for making your way here and also sharing your stories. That's what we want, your stories that actually transform societies and people. And I'm glad that you all both will stay on the course and then keep impacting. And we'll hear more of you later in the future of great things you're doing, what you've done in the past and also the future. We look forward to you more times. So thank you very much for you as well for spending time with us on AAU Talks. And I believe that you've seen them. You can get in contact with them. Go on Google, find them on social media and link up with them. And they are also ready to mentor you to be the next biggest name in science in Africa. Until then, see you next time. Bye.